Mapping the Hidden Canvas, a navigator's secrets for the great FIFA convergence. 15 days remain before the city transforms into a living, breathing amphitheater of humanity. I watch Vancouver like a painter studying the changing light, the way morning shadows shift across concrete, how evening traffic flows like watercolor bleeding into paper. The official voices sing their chorus of public transit and pedestrian virtue, but I've been sketching these streets for years, capturing their true rhythms with the careful eye of someone who knows that cities, like paintings, reveal their secrets only to those who observe long enough to see beyond the surface composition. The canvas of this city shifts with each season, each event, each gathering of souls. I've traced its contours through winter's harsh strokes, through the bold primary colors of Canada Day chaos, through every intimate portrait session that is a Whitecap's match. I understand the medium I'm working with, concrete and asphalt, yes, but also human nature, the unpredictable pigments of desire and necessity that refuse to be contained within the neat lines of urban planning. When I observe the city's messaging about FIFA parking, I see administrators working from a theoretical sketch, one drawn in the clean studio of policy, rather than painted on plein air in the messy reality of human behavior. They envision orderly compositions where everyone follows the suggested pathways, but I've witnessed too many improvisations, too many moments where the artwork of city living becomes abstract expressionism rather than careful realism. The truth I've captured in my years of urban sketching is this: people carry their freedom in steel and glass capsules, and no amount of administrative watercolor can wash away that fundamental desire for autonomy. They will drive, because driving is not just transportation, it's the preservation of choice, the ability to control one's own narrative in the great collaborative mural of city life. The foreground illusion: why street parking is a mirage. Downtown parking during FIFA will become like trying to paint with colors that disappear as you apply them to canvas. I've documented this phenomenon through countless evenings at BC Place, sketching the circular dance of vehicles, the repetitive patterns of frustrated drivers, tracing the same streets like brushstrokes that layer but never quite achieve the desired effect. On a sold-out night, I've watched this performance art unfold, a measured duration of automotive choreography before the inevitable surrender to premium parking rates. It's a ritual as predictable as the way certain pigments fade under fluorescent gallery lighting. The drivers become unwilling performers in a piece they never agreed to be part of, their vehicles moving in loops that create invisible mandalas of exasperation across the city grid. But within this seemingly chaotic composition, I've discovered the hidden geometries, the negative spaces where possibility lives. These are not the obvious forms that everyone sees, the towering structures of Pacific Center, or the prominent commercial lots that announce themselves like billboard advertisements. I'm speaking of the subtle details, the shadow areas that don't register on digital mapping applications, the spaces between the spaces that most urban navigators never learn to perceive. The fundamental truth I've learned through countless sketches of this metropolitan landscape is that proximity is an illusion worth abandoning. The real masterpiece emerges when you accept that distance is simply another medium to work with, that a significant walk becomes the connecting brushstroke between parking and destination, transforming the entire experience from transportation problem into urban exploration. Revealing the hidden compositions, spaces that exist beyond the digital frame. Through my years of documenting this city's rhythms, I've discovered that the most valuable spaces often exist in the margins of official attention, like the subtle background details in a master painting that only become visible when you step close enough to see the artist's true technique. Consider the Creekside Community Recreation Center lot, a perfect example of negative space utilization. While crowds gather around the obvious focal points of Olympic Village, this pocket of possibility sits quietly behind the community center on Moberly Road, like a hidden signature in the corner of a canvas. After 6 in the evening on weekdays and throughout weekends, it transforms from restricted space to open invitation. A concise walk connects you to BC Place, but the city's promotional materials treat this location like an unfinished sketch, never quite bringing it into full focus. The approach requires navigation beyond the digital realm. GPS systems, like colorblind assistants, will guide you through a maze of industrial confusion. Instead, I've learned to read the city's true lines. Pacific Boulevard eastward becomes your horizon line, Columbia Street, your vertical axis, and Moberly Road, the final delicate stroke that brings you to your destination. The lot reveals itself between Community Center and Skateboard Park, a composition that makes perfect sense once you understand the spatial relationships. During FIFA's intensity, this hidden gem will experience its own transformation as word spreads through the networks that connect all urban explorers. The early arrivals will claim their spaces like artists selecting the best spots for morning light, while latecomers discover that even secret knowledge has its temporal limitations. The residential streets of Mount Pleasant offer a different kind of artistic opportunity, a walking gallery between 12th and 16th Avenue, west of Main Street. Quebec Street, Ontario Street, Columbia Street become pathways through a living exhibition where parking restrictions dissolve after evening's arrival. The extended walk to BC Place transforms into a journey through Vancouver's most authentic neighborhoods, a descent through cultural topography that reveals the city's true character. I recommend positioning yourself around 14th and Ontario, then allowing the natural flow of the street grid to guide you down Ontario to 2nd Avenue, cutting through Olympic Village, like following a compositional line that leads the eye naturally toward the focal point. This route passes through micro-galleries of coffee culture and culinary experimentation, transforming the parking process into cultural immersion. The ethical dimension of this approach cannot be overlooked. These streets form the daily canvas for residents whose lives create the authentic texture of neighborhood character. Respect becomes part of the artistic process. Avoiding driveways maintains the flow of domestic compositions, steering clear of fire hydrants preserves safety's bold red accents, and general consideration ensures that your temporary presence adds rather than detracts from the community's ongoing creative work. Vancouver Community College's lot on Broadway and Clark represents another study in temporal transformation. During daylight academic hours, it functions as restricted institutional space, but after 5 p.m. and throughout weekends, it opens like a gallery during public hours. The measured walk to BC Place might initially seem excessive, but this distance offers options for mixed media transportation. A brief SkyTrain sketch from Broadway City Hall to Stadium Chinatown, 2 stops that compress the journey while maintaining your automotive independence. This lot's generous scale and relative anonymity place it outside most people's parking consciousness, like a large format work that hangs in a less traveled wing of the museum. Its availability stems from this very invisibility. Most drivers pass by while searching for something that fits their preconceived notion of convenient parking. Great Northern Way campus lots present the final element in this collection of hidden urban compositions. Emily Carr University and neighboring institutions create a corridor of after-hours possibility, their visitor parking transforming from daytime restriction to evening opportunity. These lots exist within walking distance of BC Place, yet remain invisible to the majority of drivers whose attention focuses only on the most obvious foreground elements. After 6 p.m., enforcement becomes minimal, like security guards who step away from the gallery, allowing visitors to experience the space with greater freedom. The institutional setting provides a different quality of parking experience, more formal than residential streets, less commercial than downtown lots, occupying a middle ground that serves the careful observer well. Understanding the performance, traffic as kinetic art. The city's traffic management strategy reads like a theoretical framework developed in the quiet of a planning studio, assuming that human behavior follows rational patterns, like carefully plotted perspective lines. But my years of observing these urban performances have taught me that crowds operate more like action painting, spontaneous, emotional, and utterly unpredictable when multiplied by tens of thousands of individual creative impulses. I've documented the transformation that occurs during major events, watching adults abandon their usual composed personas and become passionate performers in the drama of parking competition. A regular season Canucks game provides enough raw material for this behavioral study, but FIFA will amplify these dynamics to levels that stretch the city's compositional balance to its breaking point. The bottlenecks form predictable patterns in this urban performance. Cambie Bridge and Granville Bridge become the narrow passages where the flowing crowd must compress, creating pressure points that back up through the entire circulatory system. Eastern approaches to downtown transform into particularly dense accumulations of frustrated motion, like areas where the paint has become too thick and the brush can no longer move freely. The post-match exodus creates the most dramatic scene in this kinetic artwork. Everyone exits simultaneously, transforming those cleverly discovered parking spots into temporary traps within the larger composition. The wisdom I've gathered from observing these patterns suggests a counterintuitive approach. Commit to remaining downtown for a meaningful period after the final whistle, allowing the initial wave of departure to complete its flow before adding your own movement to the canvas. This waiting period transforms from inconvenience to opportunity when approached with an artist's mindset. Dinner becomes a still life study in local cuisine. Drinks provide time for observational sketching of celebration and disappointment. Walking tours reveal details of architecture and street life that speed usually obscures. The parking lot itself becomes a temporary community where shared experience creates brief but meaningful human connections. I've documented the particular frustration of drivers who reach their vehicles quickly, only to spend a considerable duration in static composition, waiting to pay attendants who cannot process the simultaneous demand of mass departure. This choreographed delay teaches patience while demonstrating why the slow, observational approach ultimately proves more efficient than the rushed, obvious alternatives. The evolution of secret knowledge, how hidden spaces become public. These carefully observed parking locations will maintain their effectiveness through FIFA's early stages. Group stage matches where the audience still operates from ignorance of local patterns, where my years of urban sketching provide genuine advantage over visiting participants. But the internet accelerates the transformation of secret knowledge into common practice, like high-speed photography that captures and disseminates moments that were once visible only to patient observers. By the knockout rounds, every local discovery will have become part of the collective urban navigation consciousness. Digital networks will have mapped and shared these hidden compositions, transforming them from artist secrets into public information. This evolution is itself part of the larger artwork, the way cities reveal and conceal their possibilities in response to attention and demand. The sophisticated approach involves developing multiple layers of preparation, like an artist who prepares several canvases knowing that external conditions might require adaptation mid-process. Primary parking location, secondary alternative, and acceptance of extended walking distances create a flexible framework that can accommodate the unpredictable variables that emerge when a city attempts to contain celebration on this scale. FIFA represents a once-in-a-lifetime transformation of Vancouver's usual composition, a temporary masterpiece that will stretch every normal pattern beyond its established boundaries. The conventional rules of urban navigation become obsolete, replaced by improvisational approaches that require both preparation and spontaneous adaptation. Embracing this chaos becomes part of the aesthetic experience, like appreciating an abstract expressionist work that initially appears random, but gradually reveals its underlying structure and intention. Planning for delays transforms frustration into anticipation, while remembering that everyone else navigates the same uncertainty creates solidarity rather than competition. The true artistry lies not in avoiding all inconvenience, but in developing the observational skills and adaptive patience that allow you to find beauty and opportunity within whatever urban composition emerges. These days of preparation provide time to study the city's patterns, to develop multiple approaches, and to cultivate the mindset that transforms logistical challenge into cultural adventure. As I continue sketching these final preparations, documenting the city's transformation through my years of accumulated local knowledge, I invite you to join this ongoing observation project, to see Vancouver not as a problem to be solved, but as a living artwork to be experienced, understood, and navigated with the careful attention that any masterpiece deserves.